Hello everyone, welcome to our Success Series webinar with Dr. Krishan Ramyead. Today we'll be looking at the 7 secrets of leadership, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome back Dr. Krishan today. He previously led a very successful webinar for us a couple of months ago, which hopefully some of you have attended. Today, as I said, he'll be speaking to us about a very interesting topic of leadership and how you can use that to apply it to your personal and professional lives. Before we get started, I just wanted to run through a couple of things. If anyone has any sound or technical issues, you might wish to restart the software. You can also dial in and listen via your telephone or via your headphone and speakers. So hopefully you're all able to hear us, and shortly you'll be able to see our slides also. We'd also love to hear your feedback at the end of the webinar, so you can obviously tweet us at Morgan McKinley using hashtag CareerAlly and hashtag Success Series. You can also email us on events@morganmckinley.co.uk. And Dr. Krishan will also share his social media profiles with us, which are on the slides. Also, don't forget to stay dialed in throughout the webinar, as one lucky winner is going to win some Amazon vouchers that you can put towards books or anything else of your choice. In terms of other housekeeping tips, I'll be recording this webinar, so it will be available on our website in the next couple of days. We've also got fantastic blog articles from Dr. Krishan, which we will also publish and will also be available on his website. So I think that's it from me. Without further ado, I will hand you over to Dr. Krishan, and I will get the slides up and running. Okay. So there's our questions, and over to you. There you go.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being with us this morning. Just to let you know, I've got a little question box in the right-hand corner of my screen. So as we're going, if there are any questions or comments, feel free to write them down in your questions box. And if I have time, I'll more than be willing to answer them. So without further ado, let's get started this morning. So we're just going to, there we go. So my name is, a chiropractor is my professional background, which basically means I've trained for 5 years in things like pathology and diagnosis, etc., much like a GP would, although slightly different. And then rather than learn about drugs or surgery, we learn about your spine and nervous system. And that really shows us some interesting things about leadership, which I'm going to be sharing with you this morning. This gives you a bit of a more personal view of who I am. And I show this photo for a couple of reasons, because you'd never look at me there and say, I'm the Indian guy on the far left. You'd never look at me there and say, oh, there's someone who's underconfident, or there's someone who has trouble expressing himself, or there's someone who has trouble with leadership or health challenges or had herniations in his spine. And I show this photo because those have been in my past, and yet I've found ways to overcome them, and I'd like to share what I found with you today, because leadership really, when we think of leadership, too often we think of people in employed positions, or we think only of that, whereas leadership really is, how do you move yourself towards greatness? How do you move others towards greatness? Because I've had the privilege of speaking to hundreds, if not thousands of people, and every time I speak, I ask a question, which I'm going to ask to you now, and that is, how many of us, and I say us on purpose, know that there are things we're doing that we shouldn't be doing, or know that we're engaged in things, doing, thinking, saying things that we shouldn't? Or there are things that we're avoiding that we know we should get started on. And of all the people I've asked, and I'd like you to ponder that for yourself, because of all the people I've asked, everyone says yes. And to me, that's where leadership starts. Leadership starts with, can I motivate myself towards at least what I know I should be doing? Can I motivate myself towards my own greatness? So the first thing any leader needs is a real sense of hunger and drive. But the mistake most people make, and what we know from lots of research, is that if you want to make yourself unhappy very quickly, compare yourself to other people. Now, that's not to say don't focus on other people as a source of inspiration, or don't work with other people to collaborate to push you forward. But when we are different psychologically and in terms of needs and values as we are in terms of how we look. So your hunger and drive is going to be vastly different to others. Your life is supposed to be vastly different to others. We are that different. So compare yourself to the next level of yourself. Where would you like to be in a month, a week, 6 months, 6 years, 10 years from now? And to get there, you're going to need higher standards. So you're going to have to start by not tolerating from yourself doing things that you know you shouldn't be, or avoiding things you know you should be. That's the route to it. There is no simple way around that. You need higher standards to get there. And most people I've asked them, please answer this, have you ever noticed if you've decided to improve something, let's say exercise or eating differently or a new habit, that all of a sudden it spills over into other activities? Have you noticed that if you start exercising, you're likely to start wanting to walk more? If you start eating, you might want to change how you're living, and vice versa. A lot of people, if they're doing really well with their nutrition or exercise and then have that one piece of cake, then all the other standards start to drop. So standards are the key. The only way you're going to get to a greater version of yourself and to inspire others is to have higher standards. And it must start with us. And you can see Will Smith seems to agree with us. And the last point with this is play with people who are better than you. What I mean by that is identify a specific talent or skill somebody has that you'd like to emulate, and engage with them, either in business or in your leisure or in personal relationships, and cultivate that quality within yourself. That way your hunger, your drive, your standards improve, and all of a sudden your life starts to become more on your terms than ever before. We've all heard about a compelling vision, and the famous spiritual line is, without a vision the people perish. But you've got to know a vision that excites your heart and mind. Now, what really gets you fired up? Some simple ways to find out, because a lot of people I notice nowadays are unsure about what excites them. Look at the books on your bookshelf. What are you buying? What are you interested in? What magazines are you reading? When you're focusing on the internet or articles or things you're taking in, or friends, what is it within the information you're taking in or the relationships you have that gets you excited? And then transmit that to those around you. And I strongly believe that leadership starts with ourselves, and it occurs regardless of the role you have. So I'm a parent, obviously. I lead my children. My wife leads my children. We can lead one another. I can lead people in the gym just with my example of how I exercise and the manner in which I greet them. If you transmit passionately to people around you, to community, and indeed to humanity, that fires off vision, not just in you but in others. They've done some interesting studies that show if you have, when you're in certain states, especially excited ones, if people are literally in your presence, their nervous systems, they start to engage in that, even if you've said nothing, just with the sheer impact of body language, posture, presence, etc. It's very, 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 very powerful. We did a webinar before on how to make a powerful first impression. If you're in a meeting or a presentation or an interview and you're excited, the people around you will feel that and they will like it. The third is resourcefulness. I love this. Is perhaps one of the most important points. And again, as you'll see, I'm going to keep drawing back to the same core idea. Resourcefulness versus resources. If you want to become a leader and lead your own life and indeed lead others, you have to be resourceful rather than look for resources. And here's the key difference. Resources mean I don't have, someone whose consciousness and idea of focus on resources will be, I don't have the life or the conditions or the job, etc. I want because I haven't got the time or the money or the skills. Resourcefulness says, how can I find the time? How can I find the money? How can I learn the skills? What can I do? What needs to happen? What can I do now that's going to drive me towards resourcefulness that will make it happen rather than waiting for resources? They did an interesting series of interviews with CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, asking them what they wanted in employees. And it's not sit down, listen, pay attention, which is how most of us were schooled, if you're in a typical system. It's about how can they be adaptable, creative, how can they find solutions that weren't there, come up with things that have never been thought of before. That's all resourcefulness. And you access it by unlocking your emotions in yourself and others. A bit like I'm doing now. As you can hopefully hear, I'm excited talking about this because I know this has the impact to change your lives and that of your friends and families and co-workers. And ultimately, resourcefulness comes from caring, connecting and breaking patterns. Are you really caring about your job and your work, those you work with, the outcome you're going to get? Are you really connected with those around you? Because we know that when people achieve ultimate levels of performance, there's a humongous level of connection in teams. And ultimately, identifying and breaking patterns. We all know we're stuck somewhere. We can't make a breakthrough. We feel frustrated. That's a good place to start because there will be a solution inside your frustration. The fourth is certainty. Now, this is an interesting one. We live in a society that is very focused on certainty. And what I mean by that is we're looking for comfort. We're looking for a sense of everything's okay, a sense of safety, a sense of stability. The problem is, if you want to grow and be inspired and help others and go further, you have to get comfortable with uncertainty, which is a paradox in and of itself. Here are a few tips on that. Is to bring certainty to the vision. We're really talking about not safety, but a sense of faith, a sense of, I know this is going to work because I'm going to make it, so I'm going to draw. The only certainty we really have is what we focus on, the meaning we give it, and how well we know ourselves, and how well we sense from within ourselves or around ourselves, I can get this done, or I can find a way, or I can find an organization, or I can get the feelings or the perceptions I need to push me through. And ultimately, here's a great question for you to take away and journal, write down. What has to happen for you to feel certain? Write that down. What has to happen for you to feel certain? Because that, and get curious, can you change that? Because the moment you become aware of it and acknowledge it and know that's the game you play, the game starts to change. So what has to happen for you to feel certain? And get working on that and change that, because certainty is a break to growth, it's a break to inspiration, and it's really a break to the life on your terms, because we have very little certainty in life, so we need to get as comfortable as we can with uncertainty. Or what if you knew life was working because you felt uncertain? You can rewire it. It's possible. For me personally, I do a lot of public speaking, and I usually feel afraid before, and I know when I get the most afraid, I'm going to give the best talk. I know if I'm willing to really go in and face that fear, there'll be something magical on the other side. So what has to happen for you to feel certain? Write that down, journal that, and say, hey, how can I start to rewire that? Just asking the question of your brain will start your brain looking for a solution. We've all had the experience of buying a car or an item of clothing, and we start to see it everywhere. It's because your brain has a filtering system in it. So start to ask questions, and your brain will filter for the answers. It's wonderful. So let's have a look. What's next? Strategy and implementation. There is no success, there is no leadership, there is nothing great or amazing without a good strategy. So there's 4 steps to mastering anything. So sorry, there's a lot of text that just came up at once. We'll start with the top bit. The first is decide where you are or where you want to go. So say, right, I'd like to be there. Then you have to have an honest appraisal of where you are. Then you need to plot a course, act, and then review. It's very simple. You study anyone who's ever mastered anything, and when I say master, I'm talking about elite level performance around the world in any field, be it parenting, business, elite sports. This is the formula. What most people do in our culture, and I'm going to use an analogy, they're standing in a garden that's completely messy and full of weeds, and they're visualizing the garden perfect, and they're affirming, I have a beautiful garden, I have a beautiful garden. And nothing changes because your garden is full of weeds, which means you need to say, look, I'm standing in a mess right now. Don't make it catastrophic if it's not, but get clear about where you are. Decide where you're going, plot a course and try it, and expect to fail, and know that failure is okay. I have a good mentor that says fail often and fail big and fail forward, which means when you fail, review what happened, review what worked and didn't, and hey, it's a learning experience. That's part of it. And the last thing is keep changing and be insanely persistent yet flexible. And this is a real important balance. A lot of people get insanely persistent. I'm going to do this. I've decided this. I'm going this way. It's going to happen. I'm going to make it happen. Push, 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 push. And yet if something's not working and it isn't the right thing to do, you need to be able to stop back and say, hey, have some way of checking in with yourself emotionally, mentally, spiritually, whatever it is for you, and say, am I on the right track? Am I going the right way? Because if you're persisting against your own grain, yes, Angeline, the slides, we can make the slides available. This is actually being recorded. Thank you for your question. If you just reluctantly persist but don't stop and take a note of where you're going, madness. Courage. I love this one. Courage is much more than certainty. That's what we were talking about before. Courage, real courage, is actually a very rare quality. We don't see it too often in our society because it takes a lot to generate. Courage is more than certainty. It requires faith. And in my experience, faith lies in the power of the human spirit or the human soul. It's when imagination and direction meet the action you take. It's when there's a sense of inspiration and alignment behind the decisions and action you take. We've all had it. We've all felt it. We've all had moments where time stood still, where we've been in awe or gratitude, or we've had our breath taken away by life. It is available to all of us, and it needs, like a muscle in a gym, like a habit you're refining, it needs practice. You absolutely need practice, and you need to find things that work for you to generate that. For some of you, that might be meditation, it might be prayer, it might be journaling, it might be talking with a friend, going for a walk, playing with the dog. Whatever it is that gets you in touch with that inner voice, with that inner connection, that inner sense of there's more to life than just the limited view that I sometimes have. I love looking at the sea. It reminds me how small I am, and yet how we're part of something greater. Whatever it is for you, that is required for courage, because if you want to really be a leader in the crazy world we live in, regardless of the field, if you're raising a child and you're going to push them out into the crazy world, if you're a teacher, if you're a business leader, if you're an employee, if you're just a bog standard human being and you're thinking of this with no roles, you need courage. Ultimately, when push comes to shove, courage has to be there. And all that fear is imagination with no direction. That's all it is. It's just a rehearsed pattern and story. And, in my experience, the fear doesn't go away. I've faced some very professionally, I've had some moments professionally that have really, really pushed me for fear. I felt very afraid at times. Been in some very heated political situations. And the fear doesn't go away, but with faith, there's a grace. There's something that holds your hand and takes you through it. And that's really where courage is. Courage is the strength and the certainty that comes from a sense of faith. Sound is going funny. Okay, so it could be my voice. Hiran, let me know if the sound is still strange. And lastly, authenticity and congruence. These two are perhaps the two forces that if I had to pick two things that will put everything else we've spoken about together, it would be these two. Now, for me, authenticity is much more than just being yourself. Authenticity is when you're aligned, which means it's not just me being me, but it's me being me at the best I can be. And congruence, really, I decide, is when all the different parts and forces and motivations inside me come together and push me in one direction, rather than hidden agendas and hidden objectives. So this is how I define them. Oh, get these up on my slides. Okay. Authentic is emotionally appropriate, significant, purposive and responsible mode of human life. And what's really interesting about that for me is it's emotionally appropriate to the situation, the person you're with, which means you've taken stock of where you are and you've drawn out from yourself the most appropriate thing. It's purposive, it's responsible, so basically you're adapting to life the most effective way. You're flexible and adaptable. That's authenticity. And ultimately, the best way we adapt is just by being ourselves and expressing what comes out of us within any given situation as appropriate we can to our situation. If you're in a business meeting or if you're giving a presentation to a client, of course there are going to be some ways you choose to express yourself, or not. Some of the best presentations in history have been when people have really done strange things. I'll let you choose what's the best for you. And finally, congruence, which is all forces coming together. You can tell when someone is in front of you and they are not congruent. You can tell, we can all tell if someone's lying, we can all tell if someone is hiding something. Even if we don't know what it is, we sense it. And I'm going to show you now, I'm going to do a little quiz with you right now so you can start to see how we all know this. So pay attention, there's a couple of pictures coming up. Okay, great. So you've got the man on the left and the man on the right. And I use this because this is universal. We do this all the time. And you'll see how much you already know this. You've got two men, left and right. Which one would you say is more confident? Which one would you like? And please, by all means, you can answer the questions here. I'd love to see what you think. Which one would you say? Thank you. There's someone who's answered already. Paul. Which one would you say? Which one would you give an important job to do when there's not enough time? Which one exactly? Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Hero. Which one would you like to be the head of your company, or the head of your organization, or the head of your family? Or which one would you like to be? Which one would you employ? It's obvious. Everyone's going, right, good posture, excellent. Because it's obvious. And we feel this in seconds. Now, the clinical work I do is really about taking people from the guy on the left to the guy on the right. I want you to have an adaptable sense of posture, but without faking it. Now, there have been some interesting studies. Obviously, I'm based in Bournemouth in the southwest of England, so I may never get to meet you personally. So here's a little thing you can do. Whenever you need to make a good first impression or improve your leadership skills or ability, hold a good posture. We all know what a good posture is. And notice the moment I say the word posture, even though I can't see you, I know many of you have sat up straighter in your chairs. It's a word, the moment we hear it, because we know we should be a certain way and perhaps we're not, we will instantly change. So thank you, Andy, for agreeing with me. Someone thinks I'm psychic. I'm not, I'm just experienced. So one thing you can do is hold yourself in the best possible posture for 2 minutes. 2 minutes, so time yourself. There's a Banu here. Yes, we will forward the presentation. I'm just going to write a note here. Yes, we'll forward. I can get this to right. Okay, so you can hold a good posture for 2 minutes, and basically what your brain will do, it will start to release the chemicals and the hormones as if you were already in that posture. Those chemical and hormones go through your bloodstream into your nervous system. You start to literally emit, you start to project out different sensations and feelings to those around you. That's how we make impressions. Women do this all the time. How often, women, does it take you to know if a man is approaching you to ask you for the time, or if he would like more than the time? So please write your answer there, and men, pay attention because you're going to hear some interesting answers. And men, how long does it take us to know if a man's approaching us because he wants to fight or because he wants to ask us for a direction? The answer is we know very quickly. We know very quickly because our nervous systems are designed to read each other. 2 seconds, one woman said. I actually think she's being very, very generous. I think you know quicker than that, but it happens very, very, very quickly. So the tip here with your posture is look at yourself in the mirror and relax and just see what you're projecting to the world. Hold a great posture, for a couple of minutes. 2 minutes is the time limit a lady found. There's a talk she did on TED about that. And your brain will literally start to think you feel that way, and you'll project that. So it's a very, very powerful tip. The other thing, I'll just excuse my technology, it's a little bit slow here. There we go. So basically what we're talking about is the shape, position, tension and tone of your spine is in relation to the shape, position, tension and tone of your life. That's what you've just told me. We can tell how other people think and feel and how we trust people based on their spine and posture. So obviously my clinical work is all about your spine and posture, and if I can't see you, learn ways to adapt that. One of them is just to hold the posture you'd like. I do other talks, and there's, I think, other talks on the Morgan McKinley website where we gave more tips on actually how to change posture. And if there's enough interest, we can always do something like that again. So what can we do about this? So we've talked about holding posture. Here's the key. You can't solve a problem from the same consciousness that created, so you must learn to see the world anew, which means, thank you Albert Einstein for that, we need to learn some new tricks. So the most effective that I've learned is hold a good posture for 2 minutes, and it has to be 2 minutes, and it will feel like a bit of a strain at first, and your brain will start to release the hormones and chemicals, and off you go. The second most effective way, for some of you, for some of you out there, this next tip will be more powerful than the first. Ask yourself a different question. I'd like you to do this with me at home. If you're in an environment where you can, say it out loud, or at least think it or mutter it under your breath. I'm going to ask you 6 different questions. I want you to see something. Ask, what's wrong with me? and just feel how you drop. Next question. Say this in your head or mutter it under your breath or say it out loud. Why am I so blocked? Next question. How can I express more of my courage now? And notice if you're feeling it different or noticing your body starts to change. What must I do to be ready? How can I resolve this now? And lastly, how can I celebrate the situation? Where's the gift in this? And now, what's wrong with me? Which is where we started. Some of you I know will have paused before you asked that last question, because asking different questions literally triggers different states inside your nervous system, and you'll be more productive if there's a different question going around your head. So one of the main things we can do is change the questions we ask. In my workplace, I stick questions up on my computer and around me. I've just tailored it to my needs, and if anyone asks, I tell them I'm more effective if that's there. Do you have a problem with that? And most people don't. So ask better questions of yourself, and you're going to go to the blogs at the end here, and you can see some of this information will be shared, and obviously this presentation is being recorded. So we've got change your posture and hold it for 2 minutes, ask yourself some different questions. The third thing is to move your body in a different way, move your physiology, jump around, jog, move, stretch, because the more physical range of motion you have in your spine, and the more you can move your body, typically the more emotion we have and the more able to get inspired and excited we are and more creative. We all, we've heard it time and time again, we should stand up from a desk and move around, run around, get exercise. Couldn't be more true. So you can become the leader you were born to be. Most of us have been conditioned and taught to play it smaller than we'd really like to, or we're afraid of doing that. And sadly, that fear, we all have two big ones, me included, I'm not enough and I won't be loved. Ultimately, when you break down everything we're afraid of, it comes down to one of those two. But you can become the leader you were born to be. Just start with one of these 7 steps. I need to repeat that, sound has gone. So a couple of things. Catherine, should be the sound should be back. Does the physical affect the confidence level? Absolutely. If you're more physically energized and you can hold better posture and you can project that, you'll feel more confident about yourself. On another note, scientific studies have shown that by looking after ourselves with things like exercise or nutrition, we feel better about ourselves. When we feel better about ourselves, we get more confident. So Catherine, here's a little tip. Where do you think I was this morning before I came and did this webinar? I went to the gym. I've already exercised this morning. I've already asked myself different questions. Yeah, Paul, these people are laughing. Great. So you get the idea. So let's have a look here. So some of you, I would love to be able to assist you further. So I've got colleagues up and down the country who'll be willing to give you a free stress and posture examination. All you have to do is email me and just join my Facebook page and say, hey, how do I get the free stress and posture thing, and I'll reply to you. If you're in the area, you can do this with the practitioners in your area. If I can find one near you, we'll book a complimentary stress, health and wellbeing examination and find out what your posture is saying about you to the world and how that might be affecting your levels of confidence and leadership. And we have introductory talks in my practice. The next one is on the 6th of August. Again, that's going to be on my Facebook page. They're free of charge. Finally, let's get this up. So I hope that you will join us. I hope that you speak about what you've learned here today. Share it with your friends and family and co-workers. They could really benefit from what you've learned about leadership here. By all means, look up our website here, thrivechiropractic.co.uk. I'm on Facebook as Live Life Thrive. So if you just look at the website and click on the Facebook page and or follow the tweets or the messages after this, and you'll be able to connect with us that way. I'm going to pass you back over now to Amy, who's just going to help me field any questions that we might have.
Thanks for that, Krishan. That was a really interesting and engaging session. We wouldn't expect anything less. Okay, guys, I don't know if we've had any questions through, but now is the time. If you'd like to ask any direct questions about any of this content or any advice that you would like, and we will just go through those. Is there one there that we answered that one?
Yeah, I answered Catherine's question and she laughed. So is anyone got any questions about anything we've said? We've allowed about 10 minutes here for that. And if you think, oh goodness, I wish I'd asked that, don't worry, just join me on Facebook or on Twitter. So I'm Krishan Ramyead on Twitter, or Live Life Thrive on Facebook. And you can always ask me questions that way and I can reply to you.
We've got a question from Susan there. She said, how can she be a leader if her role is quite junior in her organisation?
Sure, that's a wonderful question. So and we're getting a couple in here.
A couple more as well.
Yeah. So how can you be a leader in an organisation if your role's more junior? The best thing you can do in that situation is lead yourself well, because the Fortune 500 CEOs, when they were interviewed, they're looking for resourcefulness, not people relying on resources. They're looking for someone who can make the best out of the situation they're in, get themselves to do what they know they need to do. So a couple of simple things on that, how this is identified: making sure people finish the project that they start. A lot of people stop halfway through, and people who procrastinate. Those are the two things they look for. So making sure that you're working on time, you're doing the things that you said you'd do on time, and you're finishing what you start, shows your organization, the people around you, that person's resourceful. And in that state, your brain actually is working more effectively. So you're going to get into a more resourceful state, and that will then spiral. So we've got another question here. Posture and mood are connected, chicken and egg. Great question, Eugene. Here's what we know: when you get yourself into a stressful physiology, you cannot be, or it's very, very rare for someone to be, I wish you could see me do this. Imagine my chest is arched, my breath is full and deep, my arms are extended, my head is rocking back, I'm looking like I'm in an ecstatic posture, and I say, I've had a really stressful day. It doesn't happen. Yet, we often see people say, I'm fine, I'm great, and their posture's wrapped up and you can tell they're not. So I find that posture, the physical posture of your body, seems to be the more authentic of the two, although you can use both. That's a great question, Eugene. How does one deal with destructive people undermining your leadership, Shara? Great question, and sadly this is rife in leadership. The best thing you can do, again, lead yourself, and if you can, find a way, or rather a medium, be it in a meeting or a one-on-one, and just saying, look, I don't like it when you do this, but be specific, Sarah. So when this works, you need to say to the person, not I don't like it that you undermine me, because that's got a judgment inside it. It has to be a concrete observation. I don't like it when you interrupt me when I speak in meetings. I don't like it when you take the credit for my work. Be as specific as you can, Sarah, because then you're likely to get into a level of conversation where there's a solution. Shellin, you're most welcome for the tips. Justin, is pretending to be confident a good approach to build confidence? That's a great question. A lot of people say fake it until you make it. Confidence is a muscle. The best thing I would say is do things that you love and that you enjoy, because that builds momentum. When you've got momentum, your confidence will naturally rise. If you need to be confident in the situation you're afraid, find a private room, hold your posture in a great position for a couple of minutes and come back. You'll be at your best. But the other thing you need is momentum. And Maria, is there actually any research on linking spine health and leadership abilities? Thank you. Maria, I'll send you what we have. That's a great question. What I know from my personal and clinical experience is that, and remember, I define leadership as the ability to do what we know we should and to avoid what we know we shouldn't. So leadership for me really starts with ourselves, and then our ability to inspire other people. So from my personal experience, I notice that people who are more able to stand up straight with squarer shoulders report to me that they feel more confident and they're able to do things that they weren't able to do before. So I hope that answers your question. I will look up anything else that I can find, and if you connect with me on Facebook, I can send it to you. But that's really what I notice, and I'm being really specific. I'm looking at how does posture, and obviously the spine's a part of that, affect our ability to do what we know we should and avoid what we know we shouldn't. There was a study done in 1997, I think, and basically it was a survey of 2,818 people over 3 years, And they found that people whose spine and posture improved using a specific chiropractic technique that I use spontaneously made healthier lifestyle choices without being told to. So I would interpret that as leadership. Maria, if that's not enough, please get in contact. That's a great question. How do you keep good posture when you work at a desk and are always working on a computer? Fortune, thank you for your question. Stand up and stretch as much as you can. Make sure your chair is ergonomically positioned. So there should be an HR person at work who will be able to come around and assess that. Make sure your eyes are going over the screen, your back supported, your wrists aren't flopping down at your mouth, all those kinds of things. That's a wonderful question. But I would get up and stretch as often as you can, at least every hour. Get up, go get a drink, go to the loo, stretch your chest and back. I do what I call a yes, no, maybe. So imagine your head is saying yes, it's going back and forward, no, twisting left and maybe side to side, and do that with your whole body. So I'm bending down to touch my toes, bending back to arch backwards, twisting left and right, and then leaning with my arms sliding down to each of my knees. Yes, no, maybe. Fortune, if you connect with me on Facebook, I'll put some photos up of me doing the yes, no, maybe. I have feedback that I'm habitually shouting and internally tired. How do I remind myself to have better posture? Charlotte, great question. I would do just that. Put a sign on your desk that says, how's your posture? Just something to remind you, and then you're going to have to physically practice. Sarah, and senior management ignores it. I'm not sure what that means, Sarah. If you earlier question. I suppose there is going to come a time where you have to ask yourself, are the gifts I'm giving and the skills I have and the talents I'm using being appreciated? And do I want to stay in that environment? Because if not, you may wish to change. But I would try every avenue I can to communicate that first. And Nivea, when do we understand that we are ready to be a leader? I think you're ready now. I think by the fact you're asking the question, Nivea, you're ready. Leadership starts with leading yourself. And I think we all need that regardless of our role, position or colour, creed or anything in life. I think we all need the ability to know I can make myself think or do or organise my life the way I know would work best for me. And I'm willing to act on that. Influence your environment is an important skill to lead without authority. That depends. Powell, leading without authority. Again, leadership starts with ourselves, and obviously you'll need to find a way that works with the company culture that you're in. Nydia, how a team leader could win the love of all team members? That's a wonderful question. Be as human and as authentic and congruent as possible. People like people who are real, even when they don't like them. Vulnerability melts so many barriers. So I would start there. Just be real with the people around you. Someone's asking, can you connect with me via LinkedIn? Yes, you can. Look up Krishan Ramyead or Thrive Chiropractic.
It should also be on the articles on the website and in the follow-up emails.
Yeah, good question. Simba, what do you think of the approach that says leadership is a lonely place? How can we rewire ourselves to not be bothered by that? That's a great question. If the moment you start raising your standards, you do in a way have less peers. So I would say, Simba, categorize people in your life. You're going to have some peers, P-E-E-R-S, people that push you professionally. You're going to have colleagues, and you're going to have friends and family members, just to pick a few categories. What I mean by that is, I have some colleagues who aren't peers. I work alongside them, I might communicate with them, I might collaborate, but they don't push me professionally because their level of professional development is not the same as mine. I have a few peers that push me, and I'm playing the game with people who are more effective than I am, who've been in practice for more years, who've got older kids, who are able to help more people. So they're my peers, and then I've got friends and colleagues. So that way I've got a level of connection. I'm not lonely, but I have a very distinct peer group that push me. That's a great question. Stuart, appreciate the social group saying, how do you leverage these principles when you can only use the written communication? Great question. How do you leverage them when only use written communication? I would say get yourself into the best possible posture before. Move. When you're about to write, how can I have the most positive impact with what I'm about to write? Let your brain filter that, and then off you go. That's what I do. How do you motivate passive team members? Pinky. Pinky, find out what their values are. Find out what's really important to them. Can they attach what they're doing to those values? Can they? Do they feel a part of the vision and mission of the team? Because if they're not, it'll be very difficult to motivate them. That's a good question. How should we approach someone to be a mentor to us in order to go into the right path of leadership? That's a wonderful question. My pronunciation might be a bit off here. Zinling, excuse me if my pronunciation's off. Ask. The way it's happened for me is I've literally met people and gone, wow, you've wowed me. Would you be willing to help me, coach me, mentor me? Most of them have said yes. Takes a bit of courage to ask, but most of them have said yes. And if they don't, they'll say no and just say, look, can you recommend someone to me who's able to do what you do? How do you help build team morale, especially when you have someone who constantly poses the negative aspect of their role? That's a great question. I'd sit down and have a one-to-one with them if I'm in a position to say, hey, look, I'm noticing that you seem dissatisfied with your role, and just see what they say. And just say, is everything working for you? Are you in the right role? Do you feel you've got talents and skills that aren't? There'll be a reason they're dissatisfied and negative. I'd want to know what that is, and then say, okay, so what do you feel your talents and skills are? How do we use that? What if the person is your boss? Great. So I'm assuming if it's about the negative aspects of your role, you can do the same thing to say, hey, look, just speak to them personally. I notice you're maybe not quite enjoying this as much. Is it something I'm doing or something's going on in the team? Can we improve something? What's going on? And just say, look, I don't mean to be off, but it's affecting those around you, and I know that's not what you really want. That kind of thing. And now that would have to be very tactfully put, and God bless you if you do that, Kathy. Mirroring the person you talk to, maybe you can talk about it for a minute. You know, we know that mirroring people's posture can help rapport. We know that copying people's breathing can help rapport. But the best thing I find, Powell, is just have a genuine interest in the other person. Really, because when you do that, those other things kick in naturally. And you can just say, hey, look, I'm just interested. I'm curious. Tell me more and get to know them. That I find is a great way you can connect with someone. And then for me, influence really is, can I lead them to their highest good, not get them to do what I want them to do. Are there people who cannot be leaders? I don't believe so, Catherine. There might be people who don't want to be, but everyone has the, remember, for me, leadership starts with yourself, getting yourself to do what you know you should and avoiding what you know you shouldn't. I think we can all do that. The posture of our world leaders is not always great, Michael. Good question. Which is why I think, that, in my opinion, world according to Krishan, and this is based on me and me personally only, I think that's why they make some of the decisions they do. But that's my opinion. Is there a linkage? Are there any reading materials and videos on? So this is Gideon. Between linkage and posture. I think you mean leadership and posture. Okay. If you connect with me on Facebook, I will put up a link of the TED talk that talks about that specifically for you. How difficult is it to adopt a good posture, Nidhi? Not really that difficult. If there's lots of, I've noticed if people are really stressed and tense and their body and muscles are tight, it takes a bit more time than people who are super relaxed. Yeah.
I think we've got time for just maybe a couple more.
Let's see what
lots
we've got.
Of questions.
Sound won't be. Judith, let's have a look. One last question. Okay, so Judith, I'm just reading your question. About respect from team, happy, became a leader. I know if I'm difficult to find the right position as agency, want to call me in for an interview for a leader role, as I'm passionate about people and motivating them. That is what I'd love to do. How would you overcome this? You know, Judith, that's outside my remit in terms of recruitment. That might be a great question for Morgan McKinley to answer. So maybe if you connect with them on Twitter or or email into Morgan McKinley, they may be able to help you with that. But that's really outside my remit. So I wouldn't want to mislead you or say something
definitely.
here.
If you send us an email, we'll put you in touch with a relevant consultant who might be able to provide you with some advice as to how to go about getting the role that you're after.
So here's got a question here from Anthony Harding. I'm curious to know if that's, I have a good friend called Anthony. I wonder if that's you, and if not, there could be another Anthony Harding out there, so I'm just talking. Okay, so Anthony Harding, the phrase, this will be the question we end with. The phrase cruel to be kind to inspire change, is there value in it? Holding the thought of positive change feels better to me, but we also want quick results that have the biggest impact. That's a great question. I think I tend to always start with compassion. Or at least like to, no, let's be really honest here, or at least like to think I do. There are always times when I'm not as compassionate, there are often times when I'm less compassionate than I'd like to be. I think compassion is a lifelong practice. But tend to start with compassion, to really step into the other person's world and find out where they are. But ultimately, yes, there comes a point where there needs to be a strong boundary. There comes a point where there has to be a standard put in place. Well, look, this is what I'm willing to put up with and this is what I'm not. And just not being judgmental, just saying, look, this is how it is for me. I'd be dishonoring myself if I allowed this to continue, and I'm not willing to do that. So I would say empathy first. And once you've got that level of connection and empathy, then just honest, vulnerable communication, I found, is the best way. But holding a thought of positive change is great, but really the rubber hits the road when we get into healthy conflict with others, and that's when we can really iron out the cringes. If you have any more questions, I would love to hear them. Please connect with us on, or at least me on Twitter, which is @Krishan Ramyead, or Facebook, Live Life Thrive, and I'll happily take more questions or post materials that will support the questions that are being asked. Thank you to Amy and Morgan McKinley for inviting me again. Please give them feedback, because if you've gained value from this, I'm sure we can do it again.
Yeah,
thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Krishan. And just to follow up on that, we will be sending out a copy of the slides via email, and they will also be published on the website. So you might give us a couple of days just to get that live and sent out. Again, any questions and feedback, you can email us events@morganmckinley.co.uk, and thank you for the feedback so far, and have a wonderful and productive week. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.